Hello everyone! My presentation reviews the role that morphology plays in reading comprehension, what the research says about this topic, and instructional recommendations. To understand how morphology fits into reading comprehension, we must first look at Scarborough's reading rope. As we all know, reading comprehension can be split into two sections: word recognition and language comprehension. Both sections contain several smaller strands that represent the various skills needed to be proficient in each section. To be a proficient reader, all skills must be mastered. If one skill is not mastered, the missing strand will eventually prove to be detrimental in overall comprehension. Even a seemingly stable rope will eventually unravel if one strand is weak. This model shows why we have many students who appear to be skilled readers in early grades, but they end up being identified later as struggling readers. These students usually have adequate word recognition skills, but have deficits in comprehension. In these cases, the rope can help us identify which strands are the cause and help us implement the appropriate intervention. So what is morphology? Morphology is the study of units of meaning or morphemes in words. Morphological awareness is one's awareness of the structure of words. It involves the ability to derive meaning from and manipulate word parts. So what role does morphology play in comprehension instruction? Morphological instruction aims to increase students' literacy skills in a manner that is easily transferable across all areas of literacy, such as decoding, spelling, accuracy, vocabulary, comprehension, etc. Single word instruction is an inefficient method that fails to fill the gaps for students who already have low vocabulary, since it would require these students to learn the meanings of thousands of individual words. After third grade, an estimated 60% of words in text can be broken into morphemes to help determine their meaning. Through systematic explicit instruction over time, morphological analysis skills can be generalized and used with a variety of words, which may strengthen vocabulary acquisition and reading comprehension. Although morphological instruction has room for improvement, it has great potential in positively affecting literacy outcomes when it is consistently and explicitly taught. Now we're going to look at what the research says about morphological instruction and reading comprehension. The purpose of this 2011 study was to determine whether unexpected poor comprehenders demonstrate weaknesses in morphological awareness. The term unexpected poor comprehender refers to students who demonstrate adequate word recognition skills for their age, but their level of comprehension does not match as it is much lower. These students are usually able to appear as proficient readers in earlier grades due to their solid word recognition, but tend to show comprehension deficits in later grades, hence the use of the word unexpected. For this study, 3 groups of 5th graders with similar word reading accuracy and speed, cognitive ability, and age were identified into 3 groups: unexpected poor comprehenders, expected average comprehenders, and unexpected good comprehenders. These groups were retrospectively compared to their performance in 3rd grade. The result of this study determined that poor morphological awareness was a factor in late emerging poor comprehension, and morphological instruction can be a beneficial intervention. In 2020, one study investigated the different ways morphology supports reading comprehension for middle school students. The purpose of the study was to understand how the various skills involved in morphological knowledge support reading comprehension. The study compared morphological skills used to support comprehension in both students with and without typical reading vocabulary development. In this study, middle school students were given 3 assessments that focused on morphological knowledge, reading comprehension, and vocabulary. One of the more interesting assessments used in this study was called the Monster PI assessment. It is an assessment of morphology that is delivered in the form of a game, where a monster has destroyed the city and the students earn clues to catch the monster. The clues are earned by answering the questions or different items. If you are interested, more information about the Monster PI assessment can be found at worddetectives.com. I know that I will definitely be looking into this, as it was described as something that the students in this study really seem to enjoy. So the results of the 3 different assessments were compared, and the 3 different assessments were the Monster PI, which assessed the morphological knowledge, the MAP reading test, which was a standard computer adaptive test used to assess comprehension, and the Gates-McGinty reading vocabulary assessment was used to identify students with limited reading vocabulary. So when all these assessments were compared, it was determined that students with limited reading vocabulary did in fact use morphological knowledge to aid in reading comprehension. So this data indicated that instruction on morpheme meanings and use of their syntactic, phonological, and orthographical information will strengthen comprehension for students with limited vocabulary. So since they generally use morphological knowledge to help with their reading comprehension, it makes sense for us to strengthen their morphological knowledge so that they can become better comprehenders. Instructional application. Morphological instruction can be implemented in a variety of ways. However, for my 3rd graders, I find that a combination of morphemic analysis and context analysis has been the most effective. Morphemic analysis requires students to look at all the parts of the word, such as affixes and the base or the root. Then they must think about each part's meaning and use all this information, put it together to determine the word meaning. However, this becomes more difficult as students begin working with more complicated text where the context can change the word's meaning. When I taught 1st grade, this wasn't so much as a problem, but when I moved into 3rd grade, I saw that some words did not have the same literal meaning they would have if you were pulling them apart separate from a sentence, just in isolation. They didn't have the same meaning when you put them in a sentence, because sometimes the context of the sentence could change the meaning, and my students would struggle with that, using morphemic analysis alone in trying to figure out the meaning of a word, because sometimes, again, the context changed it and they would get confused. So for this reason, I'm glad that we learned about, in a previous class, about the outside-in strategy, which combines context analysis with morphemic analysis. So using context clues in 3rd grade when reading passages for standardized tests and whatnot, or any reading in general, can help us determine the meaning of words. So why not combine morphemic analysis and the use of context clues to help students remember, or to help students find the meaning of certain words. So the outside-in strategy has 3 steps, but I added at the beginning that a few steps, because as with any lesson, you need to begin by telling students the why for what they are learning. So why are they learning this outside-in strategy? You need to tell them that it can help us determine the meaning of unfamiliar words or unknown words and passages. It gives us more than one way to adequately figure out the meaning. You also want to make sure that you have explicitly and systematically taught the meanings of the morphemes that your lesson will be focusing on. And you want to make sure that you have a good sequential order for teaching these morphemes by starting with the most common or the easiest ones and building your way up. Once you have done all that, you can start the process of the outside-in strategy. So using the outside-in strategy can be modeled in the form of a think aloud. So the teacher can use this to model their thought process as they read. The first step involves looking at the context clues around the word. Then you look inside the word or do a morphemic analysis and look at all those parts and determine their meaning. Next, you want to keep all those word part meanings in mind while rereading the section. And finally, make an inference about the word meaning. This can bring up a lot of good discussion during a think aloud or during group work. It really helps students understand the different ways to help determine word meaning and all the different parts of how everything pulls itself together in a sentence. So I believe that this strategy will give the students some of the tools that are necessary to become independent word solvers for those times that you're not around to help them understand what the meaning of certain morphemes are. If they're not 100% sure, they can use those context clues to help them out. Thank you for listening to my presentation on morphology and reading comprehension. Have a wonderful day.